Hi everyone, Mari here with the June recap. So this time it is Monday since we don't have any trading today, and I will be talking about how I traded and the differences between June and last month that I haven't talked about. And I feel like there's always something different and new like in every single one of the recaps that I've made. But this time I think everything for me was a learning experience due to lack of OTC plays for me. There weren't a lot, but there weren't a lot that I was interested in that kind of like fit my patterns and that kind of just resembled things that I trade. So like for the first time I think in all of I've been trading for maybe like 2 years and I have never focused on a listed stock. And for this month it is pretty much like 90% of all my profits came from AMC, which I traded every day consistently for like 3 weeks. Like not only did I only trade one stock for like 15 days, but I also traded listed, which I thought it gave like great opportunity, and also like the way it moved, it felt a lot like trading a hot OTC, just with greater liquidity and more chances of slippage, but very rewarding when you were right on track. So first off, I will start with some stats. Here on the left, I will show these are the ones from June 1st to June 30th, and overall it was 168,000, which like this month it has been my best month since March, and that was good because April, May were a bit slower and it made me like very frustrated, but I still like showed up and learned as best that I could, but it was a lot more frustrating than it is maybe trading something that you're comfortable with, and that is what I did for this month. And I think that was like, I don't know, it kind of like gets you back on track and gets like all of the good thoughts back to your head when you know that you are trading right and you're trading the patterns that you know. And like the past months, it wasn't because you weren't trading your best, it was because the opportunity that showed just didn't fit the exact trading style that you're used to. So first off, I will talk about percentage profitability, and this is definitely different than all of my other months because it is 10% less than usual. It's usually at 70%, 72%, but this time it's 62. That's a bunch of like scratch trades that I just like have ideas on and just choose to cut. Like whenever I have an idea and maybe it just doesn't start working right away, I'm not very sure about the idea, but I will cut it right away if I know that it's not going my way, because I already have like the thought of what it could do, and I want it to start working right away because I'm not very sure about the trade, and if it starts working in my favor, then I will feel a lot more comfortable in taking the trade and also just executing my plan. So other than that, I will cut it, and when they don't work, like I'm not just gonna stay there. Now, moving on for average gain, that was for 3,100, and average loss was 1,500. So I think that's pretty good. I still like to stay more profitable than not, and the losses are kept smaller, so it allows me to take the trades, but know that more often than not the gain will be slightly the gain will be slightly bigger, and it's not like 50-50. And now lastly, I will talk about largest winning trade, which was for 52,000, and that day was here. I ended for almost like 58,000, and it was just on AMC, which I would talk about and my process behind it, and always what I thought, how I traded it. And also biggest loss was 20,000, and this was also on AMC, which it is pretty much what I'm mostly going to talk about because it is the one ticker that I traded for, felt comfortable with, and allowed me to stay consistent because the the ticker just followed my trading style very perfectly. And the 20K, it was like a bit of a mistake, obviously. I don't want to just take like big losses, and I want to explain how it happened, what I did, and what I will be doing right next time. So now I think we can move on. yeah, that was all my stats for this month, and now I will move in to talk about my favorite ticker, AMC. What a beautiful daily chart this is, and I love it. So, like, first off, I just want to talk about, like, I never really expected it to happen, but then again, if you look back in hindsight, like, meme stocks, lots of buying behind this, and lots of shorts also included in this, and the way it held for a few months, like, that was very powerful. If it was able to hold up and maybe start to get some volume and some news and some momentum, then it could create something big. But in the beginning, like, when it was the first trade that I actually made on it, definitely doesn't sound like what I just said because I underestimated this very greatly. And it was here on 526. I was short because I thought it had, no, I'm sorry, it was 527 because it had some resistance from over here with this big volume day. So I thought it could maybe have a decent pullback. So I was short, but then again, my plan didn't go that well. So I cut for not really a big loss, but it definitely was unnecessary, and I guess I should have maybe stepped back and looked at the bigger picture to actually think, okay, this could turn into an actual breakout. Maybe I would want a long, or maybe I would just want to stay away if I just step back and just look at what could happen instead of just maybe wanting to take a trade because it is the morning and I am ready to take a trade. So, not every trade is worth it if you just go back and think about what could happen. Since all of the months for me, like trading wise, have been a bit slower, I thought, how far can this one actually go? Underestimating obviously the meme sector, and I lost it, but that like started me to watch it. Like that's when I kept having it on my screens because I just kept watching it, just keep making new highs, and I had it on my watch after that. So I guess that is a good about it because I started trading, I started getting a feel of it, and I started to actually keep it on my screens. And then I didn't actually trade it like after on these few days, but it was on these 2 days when it started holding that I watched a video. I can link him below. That this here just looked very similar to GME on this day. So I took some long overnight, just seeing the resemblance of both of them, and it made sense, but I didn't fully trust it because I am not very good at listed breakouts, so I did not have the size that I guess I wish that I did. But then the next day it did gap up and it was holding previous highs. It held it perfectly, so I took a few more long, again not like as much as I wished, but it was a good entry, and that was a great breakout day because it already started proving itself right away. You didn't really have to hold through hard dips because all of the hard dips just kept getting bought up, and I added some and started selling also into the 60s. I thought this has been one of the best breakouts that I've ever traded, and that day I ended the day on like almost 43,000, and that was mostly on just the breakout. And maybe if you're not fully confident, that's okay because swinging overnight can be a little bit more difficult, especially if it's a listed stock. But adding when you think that it is looking better and it is looking like a confirmed breakout, that's when maybe you can have more confidence in taking a bit more size. And that's what it did. And then after that, I didn't trade it again on the long side. I was just waiting for that first red day. Like once it starts getting a bit crazy, you start looking for the first red day, which is like the breather, because this is straight up from 12 all the way to 72. So Going long, I was definitely not something that I had in my plans. Now I just wanted to think about what's next. So what's next is the first red day pattern, which is very familiar maybe to most of you guys from trading tickers or just from watching just daily patterns. Not everything can go straight up. So I was watching for that day and I did short some. I had some short on E-Trade and it only allowed me to get to 1,000 max, so it really wasn't like the main focus for me because it wasn't like the amount of shares that I would have wished to have, maybe a little bit more because this was an A plus setup and it is something that I would feel comfortable with. But I do remember it was on the dip buy that I was mostly profitable on. So I do love like dip buys, but this one I think was a little bit more like I preferred this one because it looked a lot like GME, which I will show you guys this tweet right here. And I said last time when GME had a beautiful panic, I was not prepared, scared to execute, and completely missed it. I made $0 on this dip buy, and it was pretty much just from being scared of listeds. I was not willing to take the chance because I was just afraid of it. And I remember everybody just was able to profit on it. And I felt bad because this is the pattern that I typically do trade. So next time when it came around, I was a lot more prepared. And I filled the shares that I wanted. I know it was hard to fill also in some of the shares, so I am very grateful that I was able to because I think I would have felt just the same as I did last time. And this was my trade on it, so I ended the day on 57,000 I think. But even though GME was even better, it had a lot more hot downs and it was a bigger extension, but it still is the pattern that I'm looking for. And this did become my best trade to date, but it is because I was already prepared from seeing it before and I really wanted to execute my plan this time. And sometimes when you fail, it's really good to know that you were there for it. And even if you're not, next time it comes around, you've already seen it twice. So you can go back and rewatch this and just be prepared for next time. And that's the most like the happiest that I am was because the few days after, the few days like after this, like it still kept giving opportunity and all of the dips it had great bounces. Like this ticker, it bounces so well every time it has a slight panic or a slight dip. And it's pretty much like how I traded most tickers back in February. I would have them up on my screen, buy the predictable like morning dip buy and sell at high day or just for a single just to be consistent. And that is what I did. All of these days, it was pretty much just staying consistent on just one single ticker. And you can keep watching the tickers that kind of like when you make the big moves, then watch it for just small trades after that. But just because it keeps up with the volume, it keeps up with the liquidity and volatility. So it allows you also to keep taking smaller trades, maybe not like the biggest trades like you already did, but just know that you can still be trading them even if it's not like the A plus setup that it presented the days before. And it allows me to keep my profits of the big trade, and I started like feeling more comfortable. So every day it would dip, hold, and make new highs. But except for one day, which is the day that I will talk about my biggest loss, and that was for 20,000, which the bigger picture, it's not that much, but it was towards the end of the month. And I tried very hard on on this week right here. I tried very hard to stay consistent, not take a big loss, not be oversized. And then Monday came around and that is not the result. So that was that, and now I will talk about it. So here is the chart for that day. It was on this day, on 6/21. So it was on the 21st, which is towards the end of the month. And this is what it looked like on that day. And I'll start with saying like things that I did wrong. So I took 2,000 shares. It was around this dip, maybe this dip, because it was gapping up, it was holding red. So I said, okay, I'll just take some shares and maybe it holds up and then gets over VWAP back over new highs. And I think it was at 64.70 where it made a double top. So I wanted to have a good entry for that. And bigger picture, I thought this could squeeze on that same day because I thought it would hold somewhere, but instead it stayed heavy and I was like, no, let me just wait, which was already the first mistake. Like, I am waiting, and if it's already not proving it, and over here I guess I could have sold for break even, but I wasn't really like full side, so I thought I'm just gonna give it a chance. And over here, big stuff over VWAP. It stayed heavy under the morning lows, so it was already not looking good in my favor. But then new lows again, and I was still in it. So what did I do? Second mistake was add. So I added around here, and I had then an entry of 59.70. So I had an entry of 59.70, and this was my third mistake that I made. So it bounced to 59.58. So it was really just like 12 cents under my entry, and I should have taken it because I was down like 500 at that time, but I didn't because for some reason I just thought I really wanted to gain, or maybe even like break even. So I had my limit order at 59.75. So it really just, and then obviously, like, that is when max like loss just came in, max pain, and I was just forced to cut under new lows when I could have just taken it, but I guess not. So I do cut losses very quick, but like, what this taught me was like, only one it only takes one to really erase all of the previous progress that you have made. Like last week, tried so hard, was very consistent, but then it only takes one to really give that back. And that is what you have to avoid, especially in like the summer markets. Like, you you really, really want to avoid these kinds of trades. You need to, again, step back and look at the bigger picture. This went red, this held red, this rejected red. That was already telling me that it's not going to go green, it's going to stay heavy, it's going to stay red. Just stop fighting it, stop fighting the trend. The trend is not in your favor right now. So cut and minimize your loss, or not even just hold it at all. You can always just get back. You just get back. Like, if you don't have a good entry, sell and re-enter. There's always a chance to re-enter, and that is what kind of keeps me sane sometimes when in a losing position. You always know that you can get a better entry. So keeping it small and not being emotional will only help you in the future because you can make it back, and you can also make a better trade if you aren't in the losing trade, because that already makes it a lot more emotional, and emotional trading does not lead to anything good. And like, keeping in mind, like, sometimes ideas don't work and they may seem like the best ideas. Obviously, like, we don't ever want to be wrong. I didn't want to be wrong. Obviously, I thought if we get over this level, it could squeeze to 100 like everybody says, but sometimes, like, the tickers speak to us. When it holds red, it stays heavy, it's making new lows. It's telling me stop going long, stop fighting it, and just don't stress about it anymore. So, cutting losses is so important, especially in the market, since, as we've all heard, the market doesn't care for us, but we have to care for our trading, our mental state, our emotional environment. And like sometimes it's not worth the time, it's not worth the stress, and it's not worth a bigger loss. Cut as soon as I can. And I'm glad because the next few days it continued to take some, like, I continued to take some trades on it, but just was quickly taking the single or the loss, but not expecting like a huge trade out of it. It was pretty much just to stay consistent and just realize that the day the stock matters the most are the days that of extreme volatility, when everybody's watching them, when it has the most volume and it's looking to fit the framework best. Other than that, for me, they're pretty quick trades. And I'm glad that I cut the loss because it did proceed its way to 50. So it then could have been a really big loss. So keeping that in mind, that sometimes it just doesn't work, but it could always get worse. So think of what can happen, what is the worst case scenario, what is the best case scenario, but always having your risk in mind and always stepping back and looking at the bigger picture. But yeah, like that was, I'm not really going to talk about any other trades. I'm not really going to talk about any other tickers because I just want to focus on the one that I was mostly focused on and the one that mattered the most, and that was AMC for me. That was the highlight. That came from it came the big gain, from it came the big loss. So that is the one that I wanted to highlight and the one that I want to keep looking at. But again, now I am just waiting for the important day or just being consistent, but I'm not really trading it that much anymore. But when, like, just learn to love when there's a ticker that you can get accustomed to. There's always going to be that one ticker that will speak to you. For me, it was AMC, and those are the ones that can make your months very great. I think without AMC, I wouldn't have had that big month. So pick wisely and just stick to like what you know. What I know that I am sure of, it's panic dip buying, selling quickly, panic dip buying on big red days, being consistent on breakouts and first red days. So your strategy may be different, but and know that there's a market for everybody. For me, OTC is the best, February was the best, January was the best, so that was my market. Just learn to step back and look at what market is it? Is it working for me? Is this for my strategy? And size up when you can. Those are the most important days and those are the most important months for you. So your strategy may be different, but being prepared is one of the most important things. And the only way to be prepared is by practicing. So showing up every day. Gain or loss, that's already teaching you. Like that, you're already gaining a lot of experience. So every day, gain or loss, that's teaching you, getting you ready, and keeping you warm for when it's time, and to make sure that you are there and you know what to do because you've already practiced it so much. So that was all for my June recap, and yeah, I will see you guys on Tuesday.